These 5 habits took me from daily panic attacks and crippling anxiety to doing one of the scariest things any human being could do on national television, a show called Naked and Afraid, with confidence. Anxiety is an obstacle of the mind, which is why habit number 1 is a mental habit and the foundation to all lasting change. This habit helps take you out of a stress response, fight, flight, or freeze. And trust me, I had tried fighting my anxiety, I had tried running from it, until I was finally frozen on my parents' couch because I couldn't work, mind running, only really able to just flip through channels. My mind was noisier than a broken TV until I switched to a show called Naked and Afraid. That's where I started playing the name game. Now, if you've never heard of Naked and Afraid, it's basically the anxiety Olympics. It's 2 strangers, no food, no water, no clothes. They're dropped off in the wilderness and followed around by a TV crew for 3 weeks, just trying to survive. Everything goes wrong. Yet, in these impossible circumstances, I saw people who were strong and happy. And that's when I started habit number 1, the name game. I named a clear goal. I want to be that strong and that happy. I want to be that resilient and that joyful. As I started naming what I wanted, it cut through the noise of anxiety, and it also helped me start to name the challenges I was facing instead of being completely flooded by them. And this is actually something used in narrative therapy. It's called externalizing. It helps you see the problem as outside of yourself, which you really need when you have an anxious mind. Naming my goal cleared the noise of anxiety, and it taught me something I now teach my clients as I am becoming a therapist. If you can name it, you can tame it. You can't slay a dragon without looking at it. But I found when left to my own devices, just naming goals and problems kind of led to more spiraling out, which is why I had to learn habit number 2. I started talking it out with my journal because I was too anxious to talk to my friends or family about it, and I was not ready to see a therapist. But even just journaling and physically getting things out of my head and onto the paper made a huge difference, and there's so much science behind this. And not only was I writing it out, but I started to look at what I was writing and have this conversation with myself. And with time, I realized I really do need therapy. When I could talk it out with a therapist, I couldn't just see the problem clearly, but I started to feel less shameful about what was happening, and I started to get better ways to talk about it and better perspectives and tools that would help me in my journey. Anxiety is healed when we learn to make safe connections again, and one of the most human ways to do that is through conversation and story. That's what this is. Another thing I learned in becoming a therapist is healing doesn't happen alone. Healing doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens in relationships. It happens in connection. I do have to tell you, most of us think we have a clear picture of our challenge, but we're missing a lot of the viewpoint, which is why journaling, talking to a therapist, talking to your friends, just being in community is so essential. And it also is really needed to get to habit number 3, which is where things really, really start to change, not just inside, but in your body and in the way you experience the world around you. You were never meant to go through hard things alone, and you can't heal what you're still hiding. This is where fear transforms into action, because anxiety is just energy with nowhere to go. And when you start to move, you literally move the stress out of your body. That's what it did for me. I mean, I could see the problems and the goals and name them and talk about them, but I was way too chicken to actually do anything about it, which is why I highly recommend you do habit number 3 in little tiny baby steps. I knew I needed to metabolize the stress in my body. I knew the science behind it. And while I certainly was not gonna go on Naked and Afraid, I did want to start hiking. I had found a big green dot on the map just outside the city, 300 acres of nature reserves. And I knew that the woman I wanted to become could be found in that wilderness. The first hike I did of that summer, I drove over gripping the wheel. As soon as I got out of the car, the keys were right between my fingers like that, and I kept glancing over my shoulder, paranoid that something horrible would go wrong. But I finished the first solo hike of summer with my heart pounding, and the heart pounding was not from cardio, it was just pure anxiety and paranoia. But I kept going, I kept moving, I kept burning off that anxiety. And by the end of summer, not only was I still hiking, I had hiked every single trail in that big green dot on the map. It was no longer a wild and scary woods. It was my backyard. It was a place that felt like home. I started getting so much stronger that I even started inviting people to hike with me because my social anxiety was going down. Now for me, it was hiking, but for you, it might be signing up for a 10K. It might even be something less cardio intensive, like putting a little bit of paint to the canvas. What matters is that you stop thinking about it and start moving through it. But it is a little tricky because it's easy to move your anxiety and move away from it. It's kind of the equivalent of seeing the dragon, naming the dragon, talking about the dragon, and doing sprints to get ready to fight the dragon, but you're sprinting in the opposite direction, which is where number 4 comes in. It makes sure you use that movement in a way that's truly gonna benefit you in the long run. For me, that meant going deeper with survival skills. So it was great to just hike for the first summer. It really helped me metabolize my stress and anxiety. But by the end of the next summer, because of moving with purpose, I was able to start camping alone for the first time, which was a really big deal for me. By the end of the summer after that, because I was moving with purpose towards my goal of surviving in the wilderness, not only could I make a good fire, I could make a fire by rubbing sticks together. I could go into the wilderness and build a shelter just with the materials I find there, one hike at a time, one breath at a time, one fire at a time. I wasn't just moving, I was growing into the woman I needed to become. My world was getting bigger, and I wasn't prepared for how big it got when habit number 5 comes around, but I was ready to face my biggest fear at the time, which was going into the wilderness alone, building a shelter, and having my only source of light be my own campfire. I was ready to face my fear of the dark, which is a little embarrassing to admit I was afraid of that, but I was. That night, every leaf that blew by sounded like 1,000 ways I could die. But instead of overthinking, I would move with purpose, take a piece of firewood and feed the fire, and feed the fire, and feed the fire, until I ran out of firewood and the night went dark. When I came out of my wilderness shelter the next morning, I was a new woman. Not only could I see the dragon and talk about the dragon, I could fight the dragon. Words can't explain. One of the best things I've done for myself. I want to make it clear, none of this was the cure. It was simply the training ground. You need this habit because you can't wait for bravery. You have to move towards it. When you do this, your world gets bigger. But even the bravest, strongest version of you will meet obstacles and opportunities in life that are bigger than you could possibly imagine and will demand an entirely new level of being able to manage your anxiety. And that's what happened to me when I literally got a DM from the universe. I have to be honest, even though this habit is literally what got me onto national TV twice doing a kick butt job, I am still working on this habit. This is personally the hardest one for me. I'm just scrolling on Instagram one day and then I get a DM that says, "Hey Sarah, I'm from Naked and Afraid. We think you'd be a great fit for the show." I was like, no, absolutely, that's not real. Yeah, right, dude, I'm not gonna send you nudes. But I was open to the possibility. I asked the miracle question and I replied to the text. To find out if it was real, I kept asking the miracle question, which led me into a series of interviews with the Discovery Channel. And it was in one of those interviews I was given a gift that completely changed my relationship with anxiety for good. I have to be honest, a part of me still thought this was a big scam to get naked pictures of me. In my third or fourth interview, they made it clear they do not need or want to see me naked. Which, like, thank you, but rude. And then they asked me for my entire life story, and I spilled out all the anxiety, all the PTSD, the trauma, the things I had been to, and how I held my career together as a comedian and circus performer through it all. And I felt so vulnerable as the line went completely silent. And then the man on the other end said, "Sarah, you've been through so much, but the woman I'm talking to is so much joy. You're like this joyful warrior." Those two words are what changed my life, not being on TV. Because those two words made me realize I had been asking all the wrong questions my entire life. Those two words made me realize that the woman I wanted to become was never outside of me. She was always here. I just didn't know how to look at her because I wasn't asking the right questions. I started planning to win instead of bracing myself to lose. I still was prepared. I was still moving with intention, but my movement was motivated by hope instead of fear. When I got to the final interview, I still had no idea where I would be going to survive. I had no idea who my partner would be. I didn't even know what tools I would have to survive for weeks. I didn't know if I would go. All my anxiety came rushing back in. This wasn't just physically naked. This was gonna be emotionally naked, mentally naked, on national television with millions of people watching me. But when I stepped on that boat to be dropped off into the wilderness, I wasn't scared. I wasn't even a little anxious. I was grounded and I was excited. I knew that whatever happened, not only would I be able to face it because of all these habits I built, but that I would be able to love myself each step of the way.
We are on our extraction vehicle with these cute little goats, and I am on top of the world right now.
The one question I had to ask myself every step of the way is simply, what if it all works out? What if it all works out? What if the life you can plan is too small for you to live? What if the bravest thing you can do isn't naming the fear, isn't talking about it, isn't moving through it? What if the bravest thing you can do is stop trying to control the outcomes and start trusting the person who shows up for them? Your life will get big, I promise. But sometimes when life gets big, it also leads to burnout, which is why I made this video here. Thanks for watching, and subscribe or watch that or both. Do it all. Why not? You can.